Hey everybody, welcome to Porn Free Millennial. Happy Wednesday. This is episode 4 of the podcast, Calling the Right Play, Working Smarter, Not Harder. So today we're going to go over 3 common pitfalls that can be alleviated by the right play. So this is actually quite timely because the Denver Nuggets so happen to be my hometown team. They so happen to be in the NBA Finals. And they so happen to win tonight against the Miami Heat at Miami's home court. Now, if you're a Miami fan, I am sorry. There were Miami fans leaving the game like 5 minutes until the game ended. And Miami actually started to come back, and I would say a quarter of the fans left. So if you're a Miami fan, you need to talk to your other Miami fans and tell them, get your head in the game. Go support your team. Now, if you're a Denver Nuggets fan, heck yes. We're up 2-1 now. It's a 7-game series, and we're playing great basketball. So this podcast is timely. I also love basketball. I grew up playing basketball. My dad played college. I aspired to play college, never quite got there, had some injuries, had 2 knee surgeries in high school, and just really kind of missed out on some of that key playing time. But I will say I did win some intramural championships in college. So, you had quite the illustrious college intramural career. So I will humble brag a little bit about that. But yeah, love basketball. Very passionate about it. Passionate about the game. And thought I'd have a podcast going over some pitfalls and bringing basketball into it. The analogy of calling the right play, right? So how I'll start this off is, I currently do have a coach. Now, it's not your typical sports coach calling the plays at timeout or yelling at the team to say, hey, get your head in the game. My coach is a porn recovery coach. He actually has his own podcast, which is fantastic. It's called Finding Traction. It's on Spotify and Apple. Absolutely love it. And his involvement in group and individual sessions has been a motivation for me for close to 2 years now. We do meet once every other week. We have a program that I'm going through, and it's just been really helpful. But I'd say when I started working with him and when I was going through my relapse state where it was just so hard to get out of it, and I felt like every time we were checking in, it just was like a broken record. Oh, I relapsed yesterday, or, I looked at porn today, and, I feel like so guilty, so shameful, and I don't know what to do. I just can't stop. One thing that just really clicked with me was him saying, you know what? You got to work smarter, not harder. And I'm like, okay, coach, well, what does that mean? Well, as he explained to me, willpower, it comes and goes. So you can be a basketball team, you can be a basketball player that goes incredibly hard, like dives for every loose ball, runs as fast as they can, all over everywhere. But in basketball, sometimes that's not always the smartest thing to do. Sometimes you have to call some plays. Sometimes you have to conserve your energy. You can't, it would be great, if you have the stamina for it, to just work as hard as you can all the time. But most people don't have that stamina. And that's why basketball, it's a great strategic game to where sometimes you got to slow things down. Sometimes you just have to go for the smart shots. The shots that make sense. You got to pass the ball around. You got to look for what's open. It's not always just putting your head down and just trying to get a dunk or, trying to get in and score. So hopefully that little analogy makes sense. So willpower comes and goes. Oftentimes, like when we're trying to quit a habit, we rely far too much on our willpower. Working smarter means removing the reliance on willpower and shifting that pressure to improved awareness, adapting to your environment, and adapting your environment, and automating accountability. But before we get there, let's talk about the common and oftentimes unsuccessful approach to recovery. So working harder, I would equate that to the term white knuckling. That term's tossed around a lot in the recovery game. I would venture to say that I didn't quite understand fully what white knuckling meant. I think you always hear it. I always just kind of equated it to like driving in like a storm or something, and like you're gripping the wheel, right? And you're just trying to get through the storm. You're just trying to drive through it. You're gritting your teeth. It's not fun. Like really stressful, right? I would say one time I was in a whiteout storm with my siblings, and it was terrifying. Couldn't see anything. Luckily there was a car in front of us, but this was in Colorado in the mountains, and absolutely could not see anything. We're caught in this blizzard, and I kind of had to white knuckle it a bit. Luckily I had some other people with me to help, but it was just one of those situations to where you just gotta grit your teeth and get through it. Now with white knuckling, I'd say like for basketball, it's kind of like you're just trying to score through sheer force of will. There's no real game plan. You're just putting your head down. You're dribbling the basketball. You're going straight to the hoop. You're basically telegraphing to the other team, this is what I'm doing, which actually makes it pretty easy for them to guard you, pretty easy for them to steal the ball, pretty easy for them to win the game. I think that equates for sure to recovery. When you're white knuckling, porn is eventually going to steal that ball and it's going to dunk on you. And if you're not a sports fan, I would just say that porn is always going to find a way if you're just white knuckling and you don't have a plan, you're not working smart with your recovery. And I would just say anytime you're white knuckling, eventually it's just going to happen. There's going to be a relapse. The ball's going to get stolen. The other team's going to win. So to put this into context for me personally, I think I've white-knuckled recovery consistently for at least 15 years easily. I'm 32 now. So I'd say porn really for me pretty much started at 10 years old. So I'd say like pretty consistently throughout that time, 15, a little bit more years, it was just like white knuckling. There was no plan. Didn't have any idea what I was doing. It was kind of like unconsciously it was like this habit that I just formed. And I knew I wanted to quit. I knew it wasn't good for me, but I just kept doing it. And I didn't really quite know how to quit besides just saying, I'm just going to give this up. And then that would work for a little bit. And then it'd come right back. But I would say the white knuckling really started to trickle away, once I joined porn recovery groups, sex addiction counseling, really just started practicing honesty. I'd say like that's like when instead of like playing a selfish basketball game, like where I'm just being a ball hog and just trying to dribble to the hoop without, looking to pass to anyone. I'd say like when I started, and this was probably I'd say about 4 or 5 years ago, like when I started to take it seriously and join groups, I feel like I became more part of a team, and having mentors and having coaches. And I think that opens up the game because basketball is a team game, right? Recovery is a team game. You can't just do it by yourself. And typically, right, when you're white knuckling, you're doing it completely by yourself. So I really think that I dunked on white knuckling it really hit me when my coach said, work smarter, not harder. I'd say for that, it was kind of like calling the perfect play. I feel like my coach called a timeout and just said, hey, you're struggling. We're hearing the same thing every week. Same old story. You're running that same play or lack thereof of a play. Porn's stealing the ball. Porn's dunking on you. let's write up a new play. And it worked. So what we're going to do for the rest of the podcast is we're going to go over 3 common pitfalls. So these could be like 3 things that happen in the basketball game that, you know, are pretty pivotal moments where you need to make sure that you're drawing up a play. So number 1 pitfall is lack of awareness. So lack of awareness is like failing to track your habits and or your feelings and what may correlate to the use of porn or a similar behavior. So important things as we're writing up this play is to think about the time of day, think about where this is occurring, and think about how you're feeling at the time. So like, what time of day do you typically have your relapse? Is it in the morning, afternoon, nighttime, really late nighttime, right? Like really early morning, I guess would be a better way to say that. Where does it occur? So, you know, does it happen in your bedroom? Does it happen in an office? Does it happen at work? Does it happen, you know, in the bathroom? Like, start to pinpoint and think about, is there like a pattern to where your relapses actually happen? And then lastly, how are you feeling before you look at porn? Are you tired, upset, frustrated, depressed, bored? Or maybe you're feeling confident, happy, motivated. Maybe something really good just happened at work, or something like a breakthrough happened, you know, in your life, and you're just super excited about it. Definitely can happen either end of the spectrum or in the middle, you know, with the feelings. Something that my coach and I go through every time we meet, it's when we check in with each other, one thing that we talk about is kind of like a feeling wheel. It goes over all these different emotions, and that's the first thing we typically do is, you know, hey, how are you feeling like right now when you're checking in? But that's something I do every day. I actually check in with 2 people I know really well, family members, every day. And that's how we do it. We do a check-in with each other. And I can share that really quick, you know, as a part of this. It's called a fast check-in. F stands for feelings. So how are you feeling at the time? A stands for actions. So actions are like, well, what actions are you taking to actually, you know, quit porn, to be in recovery? S is sobriety or slips. So are you sober? Did you have a slip? Which a slip would be like, are you edging, are you scrolling, are you checking out sites? Maybe you're not quite getting over the line, but you're right at the line of potentially, you know, going to that point of no return, so to speak. And then T is for threats. So what is threatening your sobriety? That typically will play into maybe some external factors in your life. You may some stressful pinpoints or ping points. And then the other T is tools. So like, what tools are you using? So that's a fast check-in. There's a little bit of a deviation, but I think it goes to awareness. And, you know, again, if you want to write that down or take a note, it's feelings. So F is for feelings. A is for actions. S is slips or sobriety, or both basically. T is for threats, and then tools to combat those threats. Really good thing to do every day is to have that awareness. Check in with yourself, check in with somebody that you know and trust. You know, if there's someone in your life that you've talked about this before, maybe that's something that you can develop, is like a check-in with them. Typically, I do like a voice memo on my Apple phone and send that out. And then the people I check in with, they do the same. And then we kind of reflect on the other person's check-in and, you know, provide them encouragement, but also say, hey, you know, here's what I'm thinking, maybe some encouragement or some tips, or just, you know, listening, some empathy for what the other person's going through. So really important to have awareness. I would say for me, really had to do a deep look into, my feelings. I had to do a deep look into like what time of day, where I was doing it, like the patterns. Like really had to dissect that to really fully understand like awareness. Definitely for me, like red flags, at least for feeling, is like if I'm tired, I'm bored, I feel like I'm not living to my full potential, like I have no value. Typically be later at night would be when I'd relapse, and then it'd normally be like in another room, like in a bathroom or something. So now that I've kind of laid it out, laid out some of the concepts, here's actually how you would put it into action, how you would actually, we got the play written up, but here's actually how you would execute the play. So like I was saying, typically my relapses happened late after midnight on, typically on the weekends. Oftentimes it'd be in another room. One thing that I did to combat that was getting in bed at an earlier time and listening either to a book on tape. I still call it that. I grew up in the 90s. I guess we call them audiobooks now, but I still like to call them books on tape. A little bit of a tangent, but if you ever listened to books on tape growing up, I mean, I loved it. Top ones for sure. Harry Potter, read by Jim Dale, fantastic. Frog and Toad. I can't remember who read that one. We used to, my family, I had a brother and two sisters. We would, we were all on the top floor of my parents' house, and there was a hallway that separated us. And so like my little brother and I were in one room, and then my older sister, my younger sister were in the other room. And it was hilarious. We in the middle, my parents, like, it was really cool. I think my dad kind of did the wiring, but we had like a speaker in each room, and then we had like a CD tape player in the hallway closet. So you'd open the hallway closet, have this like creaky sound, and we'd kind of draw straws to see, who would change the disc, if not everyone fell asleep yet. And yeah, it was awesome. I really love that part of childhood. But yeah, Harry Potter, Series of Unfortunate Events is awesome. That was read by Tim Curry. Great voice. And then we used to listen to like short stories by Mark Twain. So there was like some goodies out there. But long story short, I still listen to audiobooks, books on tape. Absolutely love it. Love listening to podcasts. And so I really leaned into that, hey, instead of at nighttime scrolling on my phone, I'm actually going to like listen to a book or listen to a podcast that I'm interested in. And I'm going to put my phone outside of arm's length distance while it's charging. So basically, like, you're killing a few birds with one stone. You're still getting like that entertainment. You're getting a little bit of that rush that maybe it's not quite the same, but you're still being, your mind's still being occupied by something that you're interested in. You're learning something, either reading or listening to something. And then you're also just completely taking away the ability to be scrolling, which I'd say, at least for me, that was one of my downfalls. Now, it could be like your laptop, could be, maybe the device, but, pick the device that you have and just make sure that it's physically just outside of reach, when you're going to sleep. You shouldn't have like your laptop right next to you. You shouldn't have your phone right next to you. If that's really the problem, that's a great play that you can run to start getting a good nightly routine. Typically, I've been really bad at this. I'm recording this podcast past 10 p.m. right now, but typically when I'm in my good habits, I'm really cutting that screen time off. I'd say like an hour before I get in bed. That's typically the rule of thumb that a lot of experts say. I like listening to health podcasts and reading articles, and I think I've heard it called digital fasting before, is when basically it's like the first hour you wake up, and then the hour before you go to sleep. Basically just cutting off that screen time. I think for our circadian rhythm as human beings, I just don't think we're programmed to have that blue light coming at us, right before we go to sleep. I think it keeps us up, and then, hey, when we're tired, what are you going to do? You're going to scroll through your phone. And then if you're scrolling through your phone, what are you going to find? Probably some porn, or something that's like that, So that's one thing. Keep it out of reach. Really pinpoint the time when this is happening. At least for me, it was at night, but if it's at a different time of the day, pinpoint when that is, pinpoint where it's happening, and then start to be aware of that, and then put a play in place to combat that. Another thing I think I mentioned was I go to another room when I'd relapse. One of the things I did to combat that, a play that I'd run, would be just to leave my phone in my bedroom. I'd still have my Bluetooth earpiece in, so then I'd still be listening to my book on tape, go to the bathroom, come back, go to sleep. And then I'd say, like, when I'm feeling bored, tired, feel like I'm not living to my full potential, one thing that's really helped out a play that I run is just pick a goal for that day. So I still have a bunch of days like where I just feel like I don't want to get up. I feel, like I'm bored. I'm not really that focused. One thing that's really helpful is just picking like a small goal. For me, it's just been like steps goals, like getting over 10,000 steps. Maybe doing some like kettlebell swings, some push-ups, or just taking the dogs on a walk, or just getting outside. Hey, my goal today is to get outside 3 separate times. Something super small, something super easy to do. You be surprised at like how accomplished you feel like after you're done. You're like, wow, hey, I just got something done. And I think typically when you have a purpose, when you have a goal and you accomplish it, that really fulfills a lot of those needs that might be missing. Like when you're bored, when you're feeling like you can't focus on anything. And that's for me, like when I've been really susceptible to having a relapse. That's just when I've just ran the play to, okay, I'm just going to do something small. I'm going to get outside. I'm going to change my environment. And that really works for me. And it might work for you too. So in summary, number 1, pitfall, lack of awareness. 3 parts of that. Think about time of day. Think about where you're at. Think about how you're feeling. And then think about what plays you're going to run for those 3 separate, or it might not be separate. I mean, it all might be together, like how you're feeling at a certain time in a certain place. But just be aware of it. And have some plays in your back pocket. So number 2 pitfall, failing to engineer a safe environment. So Benjamin Franklin once said, failing to plan is planning to fail. So what this meant to me was planning out what may trigger my porn behavior in my environment, and then engineering ways to either avoid that or overcome what's in my space. So this could be shows that you watch or your partner watches. Just about every show, I would say, on any streaming service that's geared towards adults may contain nudity or something that could trigger you to sneak off to do your thing later. So shows, websites, or apps that you use. And again, just like with shows, I mean, just about every social media site is geared towards like sex. In my opinion, there's just, I think, a huge market for that, unfortunately, to where everything's just being sexualized. So you really got to be careful about like what apps you're using, where you're going on those apps. I think there's a lot of good apps out there, but that still have like a backdoor for porn or something similar. So that's something to really be aware of. And then last, so we've got shows, we've got websites or apps. Last would be environments, so actual physical environments that could be triggering. So like one example of that, like if you're working out at a gym, I mean, I don't really think I have to explain, but just I think the way men and women dress now at the gym is probably a lot different than they did 5-10 years ago. I'm 32. I'm starting to sound like I'm back in my day, but just feel like things have kind of changed, like just socially. I think the length of shorts have gotten shorter. Things have gotten tighter, so to speak. And yeah, I mean, it's it's distracting, it's triggering. So you got to think about those environments before you get into them and like know what you're walking into, right? And I think sometimes you just got to think about, well, what environments like can I just not handle, right? Like there are some apps and like social media sites I just know I'm just never gonna do it. I just can't. There's just too much there. There's too much that could trigger me. There's too much temptation. I'm just not at a place, and like you just got to kind of be real with yourself. Like I'd say like when you're engineering an environment, like engineers are very thorough. They're very honest. Like facts are facts, and sometimes we got to look at that in our own life. With porn and say, okay, like what shows just I just can't handle. Like I'm just relapsing every time after I watch it. After I see that actor or that actress. Websites or apps. Which ones do I just abuse all the time to where maybe it's a good app that its purpose is not for that, but I use it for that purpose. Or last like environments, like the gym. Like I go to the gym, but all I'm doing is just staring at people. Like I'm actually not working out. Those are things to think about. I think for me, it's kind of like I was just getting the ball like stolen every time and just getting dunked on hard. It was embarrassing. Like didn't have any place for that. So part of like working smarter, not harder, is measuring your capacity to handle your environment. Be honest with yourself. And like what's your ultimate goal when you're approaching this environment? So when you're opening up that app, like what's your ultimate goal? Are you just like waiting for something to pop up that's going to be stimulating and hey, there I go. I'm going to go masturbate, look at porn. Boom. Like that's what we got to think about. We have to be honest about these environments, and all these environments could be truly positive, and of course I'm not talking about like a porn site, like going straight to a porn site. I don't think that's truly positive, but like watching a show, going to an app or like going to a specific environment, a lot of those have a lot of positive intent and they can benefit your life. But like, you got to ask yourself, am I using this for a positive benefit or am I ultimately using this to satisfy my craving? If you realize that it's the latter option, you may want to take a break from it or remove that from your routine. It's truly like a cost-benefit analysis on if this play is going to work or if the other team is just going to steal the ball. If the statistics show you that the ball is continuously getting stolen, you may need to run a new play, ditch the old one. So if you're going to an app, you're going to a show. I know there's shows I'm just can't rewatch that right now where I'm at in my recovery because I know where my mind's going to go, right? Or maybe certain environments, right? Where, hey, I'm going to go there and I'm just going to feel super on edge the whole time. If that's why I'm going, that's not really truly a benefit. So I'd say now putting into practice, we laid out the foundation for the play. We understand it. We understand we got to engineer our environment. Now, actually, how do you do that in practice? So I'd say, like, for example, there was a show that my past partner used to watch that it was like a reality show. And I would just say that I would secretly take glances at it, while I was doing the dishes. It was a show where people were pretty scantily clad, attractive people. Yeah, I feel like I kind of acted like I was really interested in the show for the same reason that they were, but I wasn't, obviously. Once I was honest about it, and really it was like, okay, I'm just glancing at this. I'm getting distracted. I really should be doing the dishes. I should be doing stuff, but like I just find myself, I just keep glancing over, right? So, like one thing that I did was pick a different room or just go outside when I knew that show was being watched and just picked a different time to do the dishes. I did like the analysis and like the play that I was running where I thought, hey, this might work. I'm going to do the dishes like while they're watching the show. Well, I can still see the show. So obviously that wasn't like the right play for the situation. So I chose a new play. I chose to change my environment. So that would be a situation where I'm engineering my environment by just changing it. I'm going with a new play. So after a while, the urge went away, and then I feel like I could walk by and not feel triggered because I established a new go-to play at work for me. So basically, I eventually got to a place where I could do the dishes. I didn't feel triggered, but the moment that came on, I started to feel like I was glancing over. I had a play I could go to, say, okay, let's just go to a different room. That would work pretty well for me. Another example is apps. So, we were talking about apps. Like I said, there's just some that are just a no-go. There's some apps that I have now for, social media purposes that, like I have TikTok, I have YouTube, I have Snapchat. There is a function on there where you can just go into the live feed. I avoid that like the plague, just because I just know, for me, like the short streams, I just know something's going to pop up that's going to be triggering, right? Like, you know what I'm talking about. It's like every other short video is something that's like sexual. So I still use the apps, but that's a boundary, and that's like for me, it's like a privilege to be able to use the app. And for me, I see it as crossing the boundary line if I do go to that spot. And for me, I have a consequence, if I do go there and I do use it for porn or relapse, like I got to delete the app. And for me right now, like doing this podcast and, doing this social media, experiment and trying this out, I really am finding a lot of value of it for my recovery, and hopefully you find value out of it. But for me, it's like now there's a responsibility there to where I'm like, hey, I want to be able to still do this. So I gotta stay disciplined. I gotta run this play right. When you're running a play in basketball, I mean, you got to be disciplined. You got to know how the play works. You got to execute it. So it's kind of like that. Hey, here's apps I'm not going to ever use. Here's apps I am going to use, and I am aware of how like this play could go wrong. So I'm going to make sure I execute it properly. And then, last but not least, environment. So I said like the gym. I'd say this, my rule of thumb is like, if you're not absolutely drenched in sweat, you're not working hard enough, and you're probably spending too much time occupied on other things. So for me, at least, like that's worked great. There's still always, no matter how great you are at recovery, you're a human being. You're going to see a beautiful woman or a handsome man. You're going to be like, your body's going to be like, dang, that person's attractive, right? That's going to happen. It's not about avoiding that. It's about just being aware, like when that happens, just make sure that you're aware that's going to happen and just know what your environment is and set yourself up for success. Have a play for that. Just because you see someone attractive or there's a show on that has some sexual scenes, that doesn't mean that you have to go to the next level after that and put yourself deeper in the hole by looking at porn or, having behavior like that. You can make a choice. So, in summary, number 2, failing to engineer a safe environment. The big parts of that is looking specifically at, TV shows, apps, and then physical environments. And then really with that, it's just setting some clear boundaries and setting up some plays there that you can run that can help you change your environment or help engineer your environment. So last but not least, number 3. Maybe you touched on this a little bit earlier, but missing accountability. That's number 3 pitfall. In recovery, accountability is crucial. Using porn in just about every case, I'd say, is like an isolating behavior. Never heard of someone watching porn with family while opening up Christmas presents, sharing with friends in a group text, or posting on your social media page. Maybe some people do post porn on their social media page. I've never done so. I think that'd be quite an interesting thing to do. But porn consumption, it's often done alone. That's kind of the point. With a locked door, headphones in, secret, in the dark, incognito mode, does that strike a bell to anybody? I know that struck a bell for me, as I was writing this. Like, yeah, incognito mode, of course. We want to find ways to initiate successful accountability, but we want to do it in a way that takes little to no effort. So this is a very crucial play that we want to run, but we want to make sure this is like an easy play that we can run. It's kind of like a go-to play. It's a simple play, but sometimes we get caught up in the game and we forget that we have this play in our back pocket. So I'm going to list off a few different things that you can do for accountability here. So one is just to talk to someone on a routine basis. So this could be like a friend, a sibling, a mentor, someone in your life that cares for you and knows what you're struggling with. There's so much power in sharing and being vulnerable. There's so much power there. And it's hard, but once you start doing it, it's one of the most powerful tools you can do is just to talk to somebody on a routine basis. It's huge. This could be a quick call, email, text, voice memo, in-person chat. I think just the action alone is the win. So the play that I have run, and I think I talked about this a little bit earlier, is, I send a voice memo to 2 family members, and then I do reach out to my coach. He's pretty busy, with his podcast and things, but I'll still like the action alone of just sending him a voicemail or a text or an email just to check in with him is really helpful. And then it provides, some talking points that we can talk about when we meet every other week. We meet bi-weekly. We do a curriculum, me and my porn-free coach. We discuss it, so an hour every other week. So that's something that's in place, a routine where I'm actually connecting with somebody and being accountable. Adding those actions into my recovery plan has been amazing. It really does take the pressure off of you when you can talk to someone without judgment. And the amount of encouragement that I get from these calls and both listening and talking, it's just hard to put in words. It's just the amount of connection that you get and support and encouragement, motivation. It's awesome. So that's a great place to start. If you're just completely alone in secret, finding traction, great place to start there. Another great place to start is Porn Free Radio. That's actually when I first started with my recovery. That's where I went. Absolutely fantastic podcast, and both people that have those podcasts, they also have their own coaching programs. So definitely would recommend that too. Like if you're kind of like, I don't really want to bring this up with family or friends. It's a great thing that you can do is actually, work with somebody that's incredibly experienced like that. Number 2 with accountability is, just putting your phone, laptop, magazine, whatever it is, in a hard to get to place during the day or time that you struggle the most. We covered this a little bit, but I think this kind of plays into like the accountability play. Like, you got to be accountable about it. And if it's still difficult to be accountable, work with someone that you trust to maybe take it off your hands. If there's like a website that you're struggling with, it could be if that website needs a password, having like a friend or someone that setting a password. If it's a physical object, let them hold it or hide it for a certain time. I know this kind of like sounds weird, but this can help break cravings and the habit. And if it's just you, like if it's your phone or if it's your laptop, I know that I talked about like putting it out of arm's length, like when you're going to bed, like charging it, but it also could just be like certain times of the day, just like put it somewhere away, somewhere hard to get to. I almost bought a lockbox. I didn't, but I almost did, just because I was getting to this point to where I just couldn't help myself. When there are barriers, there's oftentimes, our cravings will dissipate and the habit will fade away and new healthier habits will emerge. If you break this barrier, then you have to set some consequence related to that object where you're struggling with your accountability. So if it's your phone and you're like, hey, I'm going to set it away for this certain time of the day, and then you end up breaking that and you end up like relapsing, looking at porn, there has to be some kind of consequence tied to that object. There has to be. One example of me running this play is putting a sleep timer on my phone for 10 p.m. which obviously, like right now, I'm not doing a great job of that. But when I'm in the zone and I'm really, all my routines are clicking, I have like a wind down time for my iPhone. So basically, it restricts certain apps after 10 p.m. So that's still the truth. I might not be going to sleep at 10. Excuse me. But I have restrictions on certain apps after a certain time. So that still happens. And this app does have like a reminder for me at like 9 p.m. to start winding down. And like I said earlier, I think having like that hour of time to like wind down, get off your phone, get off your laptop before you go to sleep, it's just really healthy. It helps you get good sleep. And I think good sleep is like a key thing with porn recoveries. Like if you're not sleeping well, it's really hard to run the plays right. Like you're going to be throwing the ball out of bounds because you're just tired and a little bit delusional. That's how I feel sometimes when I'm incredibly tired and didn't get any sleep. It's like I can't focus on anything. I forget my routines. It's just awful. So, when I do follow this routine, I don't really have a problem. I don't have a problem with porn because, I know that I'm going to be off my phone at a certain time, and that's just what I do. If I don't follow it, I got to put in other measures to ensure that I don't slip. And if I do slip, consequence that I have is I have to use the flip phone for a month. Luckily, I'm almost at 4 months now, and I haven't. But gosh, I really don't want to go to a flip phone. Those used to be cool. I mean, they're basically indestructible phones that could survive like a nuclear war. But I like my iPhone, so I'm gonna keep my iPhone. So that's one like thing for me is like for accountability is like I'm gonna stay true to the things that are working for me, and like there's gonna be consequences, and part of it's with physical objects. That's really number two. It's just for accountability is sometimes you just got to physically move that object. You got to physically put it in a different place, or work with the phone to set certain parameters to shut down certain apps, or just to start winding things down. So third play here is install software. So this could be accountability software, parental controls, ad blockers, timers on your phone. There may be many ways technology can help benefit your recovery. This was like the breakthrough right here. All right, I'm going to spill the beans. This was one of the breakthroughs, big breakthroughs with working smarter, not harder. So this is like the one that I avoided the most. My coach stated multiple times that if I installed accountability software, it really helped me get some consecutive days of sobriety. I remember getting off that call, the call that I've mentioned this whole podcast that really, working smarter, not harder, that really clicked with me. And I downloaded, it's called Accountable to You. So it's accountable and then the number 2 and then the letter U. And AdGuard. AdGuard is the other one that I downloaded. So basically Accountable to You, it's a software you can put on your laptop or your phone. Basically what it does is it will shoot over like questionable activity over to your accountability partner through like text or email. And it basically just tracks like, it doesn't like send them constantly like, what you're doing the whole time, but it will build like a report to say, hey, like, so-and-so went to this many sites and it's all clean, or so-and-so has some questionable activity. Like here's like what they were searching, or here's the site. It doesn't take you to the site, but it kind of gives you like what they were looking at. It's awesome for accountability. Kind of share a funny story. So, when I was revamping Porn Free Millennial and getting ready to do my podcast, all that, my coach was like, are you doing okay? He's like, I'm getting a ton of flags right now. And it was all like Porn Free Millennial. So that's like, it has the word porn in it. So he was just getting flagged. My family members were getting flagged. Like everyone was like, are you okay? And I'm like, I'm great. Like, what's up? And they're like, well, accountable to you is like sending me all these, texts. And, I thought that was cool just because it prompted them to say, hey, are you doing okay? Sometimes that's the hardest thing is like when you're in a relapse and you're in that state, it's so easy to say like, oh, well, just reach out to someone. Like that's so hard to do when you're in that state. But if you work smarter, not harder, and you automate that to where you don't have to do anything, a text is going to go out to who your partner is and they're going to get it. And that might wake them up in the middle of the night and they're going to be like, what's going on, man? Um, it just builds that extra level of accountability. It really helped me out. I put my family members on it. I put my coach on it that day. And since that day, I've been porn free. AdGuard's another one. That basically just kind of blocks any kind of like ads that may be sexual in nature. It's got basically kind of like the parental controls in there. It really helps out just kind of keep out anything that might pop up and any kind of ad or images. There's certain restrictions you can put on your computer for sure for sites and things like that. So those are just two accountability, software items I put on my phone and my laptop. I know there's a lot of other ones, like Covenant Eyes is a big one. There's a lot out there. The ones that I did, I think they were pretty cheap. So definitely can check them out. I think I have the links in my Substack article. But yeah, that was just huge. It was just all about transparency, and it was like automated transparency. I didn't have to do anything. It was already set up. So I know now if I like jack around, I know I'm going to be held accountable because it's going to go straight to my partners. So that really, for me, that really spoke to me about working smarter, not harder. So that's number 3, guys. And I know it's a little bit longer of a podcast, so thanks for bearing with me here. Hopefully there's some good takeaways for you. But the third, missing accountability. And again, to sum that up, talk to somebody on a routine basis. Put your phone, laptop, magazine just somewhere hard to reach. If you're really having a problem with it, like physically put it somewhere, or install some software. This one I'm really going to pitch. If you're just having a problem, you're having the plane is just not leaving the tarmac, can't get off the ground. This one's huge. It's a huge one. Is just install some software. It takes so much of the effort out of it. It takes so much white knuckling out of it because the software is doing it for you. And really, like, in order to relapse, like, you got to like bypass all this stuff. Like, it's a ton of work to try to do to like not get caught, quote unquote. So definitely push installing software is huge. So just want to tell you all, thank you. If you're still listening or if you're reading the Substacks, really appreciate it. This is not easy by any means to be on this road, right, guys and gals, if you're listening. It is attainable, though. I think normally you're going to be starting off feeling like you're like a high school team playing like the pros. Like you're going to get your butt kicked. Sometimes it feels even like, you'd be like a high school team playing the Denver Nuggets. And you're guarding Nikola Jokic, like the 2-time MVP. And he's just scoring on you and making you look silly. That's definitely how I've felt a ton of times. We've all been there. I've been there so many times and, understand that truly what matters is being on the court and playing the game. You got to get out there, show up to practice, condition yourself, get into better shape mentally, spiritually, physically with your relationships, play the game, run new plays, because the ball will be back in your court and you will be soaring through the air, light as a bird, powerful as a lion, slamming down on porn. So thank you all. Please, keep liking, subscribing. I've got Substack that I love to write on. So if you're interested in getting like weekly updates and like tips and like articles, make sure to go to my Substack, it's Porn Free Millennial. Subscribe. I'm on Apple, Spotify, Substack podcasts. Also post videos on TikTok. I'm trying to figure out YouTube. For some reason, like, my videos are just not posting there. So I'm going to try to figure that out. But really appreciate everybody. I'll be back next Wednesday for another podcast. Until then, have a fantastic week and keep fighting the good fight. Thank you.